definition alone, they're inferior films. Films.
Sequels suck. Sequels suck. Sequels suck.
Welcome back, movie fans. This is the podcast Sequel Suck, and I'm your host, Cable Sage, and my co-host, Angus Brown, is to the left of me, or the right of me, depending on which way you're watching this or listening to it. And we are here to talk about a sequel to a movie that was a smash hit in the 2000s. So this is one of those sequels where there's been a massive gap between the original film and them coming back for the sequel. Obviously, there's a few key players coming back. Ridley Scott got back in the director's chair for the sequel as well. Connie Nelson was back. Who was the other one? Why the name escapes me? I just looked it up.
Derek Jacobi is back.
Sir Derek Jacobi, I should say.
Sir Derek Jacobi.
And so it is a continuation of the original 2000 film. It's definitely a sequel, and we're going to get right into it. Angus, you saw it in IMAX, I believe.
Did see it in IMAX. In all its ginormous men with swords and no shirts glory. It was a pretty epic production, an epic event. It's certainly a wild ride if you see it in IMAX, and it's definitely a lot of fun. I did what we normally try and do when we're approaching a sequel on the show is I rewatched the original just before. In fact, I rewatched it the night before. I hadn't rewatched Gladiator in I'm going to guess probably 15 years since I've seen Gladiator.
Okay. Yep.
And I watched Gladiator, and about 10 minutes in, I thought, why did I wait 15 years to rewatch Gladiator? This is one of the greatest films of the last century. It is absolutely fucking phenomenal. And that begins, I guess, the biggest obstacle that Gladiator II has, in that the original is, in my opinion, a perfect film. I was looking for the flaws, Russell Crowe's Australian accent and all. It is a perfect film. The story is incredible. The pacing, like the movie is 2.5 something hours. You never feel like you stop moving. The slowest part is the opening scene where he runs his hand over the wheat. And then that movie does not stop. And every shot, every moment, the score, the act, my goodness, that film is incredible. So it was a pretty tall order, I thought, to go back to ancient Rome, to go back to the Coliseum and to see what they could do. The spectacle of Gladiator II is there. It warrants its existence, in my opinion, just for the spectacle of seeing these guys in the Coliseum and seeing it in IMAX. They don't sponsor us, but if they want to, bring it on, man. If you're on the fence about seeing this movie and you have the opportunity to see it in IMAX, that is the way to go, because it was built, it wasn't shot entirely on IMAX cameras, but it was built to be seen in the biggest, grandest, most over-the-top way possible. With that being said, how did you see it?
Oh, I saw it just on a very plain VMAX. I can imagine it being a massive spectacle in IMAX. And I totally agree with you. I think this movie is worth seeing. I've seen a lot of very varied results. I think the last time I checked, Rotten Tomatoes or one of those ones, it's at about a 70%, or maybe IMDb it's 7 out of 10. So it's sort of that, not terrible, definitely not terrible, but not the most amazing thing. Right off the top, I mean, firstly, I couldn't believe you hadn't watched Gladiator for 15 years. But look, it happens. I think some of those...
You know what? It's one of those movies... When it came out in 2000, I watched... Well, I guess when it hit DVD in 2001, I watched it nonstop. I owned the deluxe DVD, and it was on weekly. And I think what happened was I, graduated high school and moved out into the world and watched it maybe once a year for a few years. And then it kind of became one of those movies that when you reach for it on the shelf, your first reaction is, this movie fucking rocks. And you don't need to check in with Gladiator. And I think that's the problem I had. You don't need to check, like, is it really as good as I remembered? Should I check in again? Oh, I don't know. Rusty, he's fallen off a bit lately. What if he's... Nah, fuck all that. Like, watch it yearly. It's goddamn amazing. But I do think it is that thing where I just kind of accepted it's one of the best films. It's found its way back into probably my top 20 films of all time. We should one day do a list, because I always feel like Gladiator is in sort of my top 10-ish. But I feel like the last time we did one of those, people do those, they tag you on Facebook, like, do your 10 best movies or 10 movies that changed your life and all that sort of stuff. And I feel like I've always had Gladiator just out.
Because I've
But
had
that's
10,
it's so good. It's easy to overlook it. It's
yeah.
easy to kind of forget that that it is a perfect movie for the most part. Even I've spoken to people in the last week, just as the hype is around, and say, Gladiator. Do you remember Gladiator? And I've spoken to people like, I don't like Gladiator because I watched it too much when it came out and I'm sick of it. And I said, but do you think it's a good film? They go, even the people who didn't like it went, oh, it's amazing. It's an incredible movie.
Yeah.
I broke it. I overwatched it and now I don't like it anymore. So even the detractors of the original, I think, look at it and go, fuck, it's so good.
Yeah, so I do hear you in regards to Gladiator. I think it's definitely one of those films that I had up there. And like you, I saw it, well, I don't know if you saw it at the cinemas, but I saw it at the cinemas, and it was one of those things where that was when DVD started to really take off in Australia, and that was one of the first sort of big releases where people were hanging out for, and it was a double disc. It was a thicker box, and it was one of those. Again, it wasn't the first movie, but it was one of the first that really leaned into DVD is this new technology. We want you to buy it. It's better definition. But it wasn't just that. They went all out with features and obviously an extra disc, all that sort of stuff. I had that disc. I still have it somewhere. And you're right. It was probably something that got watched a lot. Probably in the last couple of years, I definitely haven't given as much love to Gladiator. Like you said, it's one of those things, I think, when you've got more time on your hands, maybe you're socialising more, putting movies on more, it's very easy to grab Gladiator DVD off the shelf and go, wow, this is a banger, like, let's chuck this on, everyone's going to be happy. And you can sort of, come in and out and most people just focus in on the battles anyway. But, it's definitely one I probably haven't watched as much, like you said, as well. Like, I put it on the other day. I probably hadn't watched it for maybe 2 years, and even before that, probably. And the rewatchability of that film, while it hasn't diminished, definitely just different things in life come.
Look, the runtime is a factor. The runtime definitely stops you from just throwing it on any old time.
Yeah,
even though it doesn't feel long, you still have to physically give it close to 3 hours of your life.
Yeah, and that's true too. It's not like you said, it's a quick, cracking movie, but when you say quick, the runtime doesn't change. So anyway, that's neither here nor there, I guess. But then, what was I'd like to know your thinking and what you were thinking going into this film, or even before this film, because I had a lot of thoughts and hesitation of them even making a sequel, because there was a famous Nick Cave written sequel many years ago that I'd heard about. I never went. Apparently, it's available on Reddit or one of those. It is available to read if you
can
want.
read it online. I can give you the summary of it, and the summary is one of the greatest film summaries ever.
Yeah, and that's probably where I got most of my information. So I knew he was in the afterlife, Maximus, which is Russell Crowe's character. Russell would be back. It's a very out there idea, but I think in this day and age, it's not that out there anymore. I think
the idea is this. Yeah. It focused on the mythical elements of ancient Rome and would have seen Maximus arrive in the afterlife only to be faced with the other souls who are yet to ascend further. He's eventually tasked by Jupiter and the other Roman deities to return to Earth to find and kill Hephaestus, a former deity who has betrayed them. From there, he is resurrected as a Christian and finds himself journeying back to Rome on a mission to stop Christianity from spreading. While the paths crossed with the new Emperor Lucius, the movie would have ended with Maximus killing Jesus Christ and being cursed to live for eternity. It would have had montages of him being a soldier throughout eternity, including the Crusades, World War II, and the Vietnam War, eventually revealing modern-day Maximus working in the Pentagon in Washington. I'll be honest with you. I wish they made that movie instead. I wish that was the movie we got instead of Gladiator 2. Because Gladiator 2, I'll tell you what my hesitations were when the story of Gladiator 2 was announced. The idea that 24 years later, we're going back to ancient Rome to follow the now, not in the original, but now retconned son of son of Maximus.
Yeah.
Well, look, I watched the original pretty freaking closely the night before the sequel, and I got to tell you, man, they really dug into some nods and winks and just dragged that out to be a whole plot line. But in any case, the kid who is not his son in the first one is now his son, and is a grown up and is not in Rome for Roman reasons, and then somehow winds up having the exact same thing happen to him that happened to his dad.
Yeah.
And then he goes and plays out the thing. So my trepidation when they announced the story was, oh, are we going to do a remake of Gladiator and pretend it's a sequel?
Yeah.
How much that happened or not, we'll get into shortly. But what was your hesitation about Gladiator 2 when you first heard about it?
Well, like you said, that the idea that Nick Cave had originally, like if it had been back in 2003, mate, for me, I would have thought that that's just too much. They've really swung for the fences and then gone a bit too. That would, to me, that would have been a sequel that would have been, oh, you've gone a bit too ridiculous. But now, if they were making, say, if Russell was still in decent shape and or maybe even as much time hadn't passed, I think 2024 could deal with that storyline. I think that would actually work and would rock. I don't know if I would have liked the idea 20 something years ago, but the issue I had was you had the villain die and the hero die in the first one.
Perfect
and like
game.
you said, you've made a perfect film. I did win 4 or 5 Academy Awards. It's obviously very well regarded as a film, not within these walls, but, in general, like people, it's in their favourite films, or just it's always recognised from a Hollywood standpoint as a classic film. It's one of Ridley's best. So you're going back to that you have to have a compelling story, I think, and you sort of touched on it, like whether they retconned or they elaborated on something and maybe changed something to make it suit them a bit better, or we can argue that. But you're right. I went in with low expectations. Maybe that's why I walked away enjoying this film. But I do understand its flaws. So, I'm sort of mumbling and rambling a little bit. But I
mean, look, we're kind of dancing around it. I think.
I'll put it this way. I didn't want to cut you off, but I'll put it this way. I'm happy. It was one of those movies. I'm happy to have Gladiator be a standalone film. I didn't need a sequel. I don't think there was enough compelling stuff left with what we had at the end of that film to justify a sequel that I would care about. Like we talk about a lot in this podcast that, with this making a sequel, normally you've got a movie that was a bit of a surprise hit or a smash hit, and people are, we want to go back to the universe. We want to revisit those characters. We've got some other stories to tell. So there's something to go back to. I don't think there was enough to go back to Gladiator. You can give me Rome, the Coliseum and all that rubbish, but is that justifiable to go back to these characters? And I just don't know. I think the only way Gladiator kind of works is if Russell did survive and didn't die at the end, or Joaquin Phoenix's character, which I don't know why I've forgotten his name for a second, but if he hadn't just lived, then you can go back to Rome. Yeah, you could have gone back and kind of go, well, there's other stuff happening there. Maybe someone else comes in. You can kind of justify a sequel that way. I just don't think there's actually any justification to go back to Rome in this, like for this film.
Yeah, look, I'm going to preface all this by saying that we spoke about this last episode, how I realized that despite best intentions, sometimes when we're talking about sequels, I can come in hard with just like a lot of negative shit. I'm like, yeah, it was fun. And then I just talk about all the things I didn't like. So I'm going to get that out the way early in this episode and then get to the rest of it. But I will start by saying the story of this movie is balls. It's bad. It's a bad story. It doesn't earn coming back to Rome in any way. It doesn't earn us revisiting this. Like, make another movie about ancient Rome by all means, but making a sequel to Gladiator, this story doesn't, it's nothing about this story feels organic. It feels very forced. It feels like we want to make a sequel to Gladiator. What can we possibly do to tie it to the first one? Okay, the kid's alive, the mum's alive. What are we going to do? Okay, the kid is Maximus's son. Okay, now how are we going to get him in the mix? All right, let's cast him out to the barbarians and then let's capture him and bring him back and get him in the Coliseum and he's a gladiator. And I'm sure someone went, aren't we kind of just doing the first movie again? And they went, shh, we'll fix it later. And they didn't. And it just kept going. And then in order to distract from that, they started to add some pretty outlandish elements, like the truly crazy brother Caesars and the very over-the-top, bizarre, supposedly mysterious and sinister Denzel Washington, but I thought quite blatant and obvious Denzel Washington character. And what we get is a story that kind of is just, it's there to get us to the next really cool fight in ancient Rome. Whereas the first film felt like an incredible story, elevated by friggin' badass fights. This one felt like they watched the first one and went, we want to do that again, but this time we want to do it with baboons and rhinos and sharks. And God bless them, because it rocks. So I just want to get that out of the way front straight, because I don't think the story of this film works. That being said, I'm glad this film exists purely for the spectacle.
Yeah.
This is a movie that you go and watch on a big screen with a bunch of friends, and you eat some popcorn and you go, oh, Jesus, when a baboon jumps out and rips a guy's neck off. And you go, oh my God, there's boats and sharks. We always wanted boats and sharks in the first Gladiator. And they fight, and you've got all these cool guys doing cool shit. And there's some political intrigue that's pretty like, bleh. And then you've got these crazy Caesars who aren't really, you know, they have none of the cunning or the brilliant writing that was going on with Commodus, Joaquin Phoenix's character in the first one. I think that the two actors playing the Caesars were incredible, and I think that those characters are incredible, but I'm also very glad they went a different way. And instead of trying to make them really layered and complex and conniving, but also damaged, they were just like, no, they're crazy. That's it. They're just crazy.
Yeah.
And that, I think, the Caesars really are the biggest giveaway to this movie as to what they were trying to do. In the first one, they wanted an extremely complex, extremely in-depth story about lots of different things. In this one, they want spectacle. The guy's got a fucking monkey. Let's go. Like, they're crazy. Who cares? And you're off. And it is a wild ride. It's fun. It's wacky as all hell. Everyone in there, except for Paul Mescal, seems to be having a really good time. And we'll circle back to him, but everyone else seems like, the actors seem to be having the time of their friggin' life. So we'll unpack it, but this one's a weird one because it's the foundation of the film, the story. It's not good, but that doesn't mean that the movie isn't good. And it perplexed me a bit. You said you enjoyed it. How do you feel about the movie?
It was so I did, and I like to think maybe I went in with very low expectations. But yes, you're right. I like the spectacle of it, even though some of it was fairly outlandish and a bit like over the top. And I'm not one that has gone down that rabbit hole of, is that historically accurate? Apparently, the monkeys and all
that shit was real. They were insane.
No.
I think the only stretch is the shark is probably the biggest stretch.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, people debate whether that's actually accurate and all that stuff for the Coliseum. But I think I did make the mistake of I couldn't put my finger on it. Like you said, there was issues with the story, and like you said, it was just a rehashing. And it's funny because I actually thought it, and someone actually said it in a podcast or a YouTube video when they were discussing it. And they said it was like Ridley Scott, that this version is his Force Awakens to Star Wars. It's like, well, we'll just follow the template as close as possible. And you're right, it's so similar in so many ways. There's an initial battle, and Lucius, very similar to Maximus, is taken prisoner or is going to be cast off, and he becomes a gladiator fights. And there's obviously political intrigue in the background and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of symmetry to the original, and so it's like, well, you can argue, so, well, did they really go out of their way to do something different? I don't think they did, but I think one of the problems for the story is the death of his wife. We don't get to meet her, we meet her, but we don't get to spend enough time with them to understand their. I get it. They swap the rings and all that sort of stuff, but I still don't think there was enough there. Whereas if you look at the original Gladiator, like, how devastated were you when you saw that he was racing back to save his wife and child, and that they're dead? And in a lot of movies, they would have let him sort of save him, or at least they'd be redeemed, or something would happen. But, no. He's not going to be able to save his wife and child. And so there's this huge emotional ride for us as an audience. Whereas this one, unfortunately, you want to feel bad for him, but it's kind of like, well, she's in the battle with him, and well, what did you think was going to happen? I just, it was one of those
Like
things.
one of many, many soldiers got killed, and this one just happened to be his wife. Whereas in the original, and in the original, like Maximus's wife and child do nothing. They stand in a field, like in terms of as characters that we get to interact with as an audience. They stand in a field, they stand up, they see the horses coming. For some reason, they are the only characters in the entire film that don't speak English, but never mind that. And then they die off screen, and it's fucking harrowing. It is absolutely harrowing. And in this one, I was like, okay, cool. I guess she's dead. And then, and here's the other thing. That is a very important plot point for about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And then he forgets about his wife the second his mum shows up, and he never mentions her again.
Yeah, and that's kind of a bit where, again, I'm gonna have to put it in the. I'll insert it at this point when I'm watching back. I'll point down, and whoever I watched it on YouTube, I'm going to acknowledge you. I did see a YouTube video, and that was one of the things they sort of expressed that the problem. One of the problems was that it was this, Russell Crowe or Maximus had this massive, thing. You knew he wanted to fight for Rome, but he wanted to get back to his wife and child, been away for too long.
He was a Spaniard.
He did his part and then tried to kill him, and he knows they're going to kill probably them, so he races back, and he can't protect his wife and child. So that's a big, big deal. This YouTuber, and again, I'm going to put it down here because I can't for the life of me remember it off the top of my head, and I should have written it down. But they were talking about the problem with also, okay, we have the wife and whatever, and they swap the ring, so we know there's a very intimate, loving relationship there, so we're supposed to care, but as an audience. But the problem is, and I don't know if it's this woke thing, whatever, like to show that women can fight too or whatever, but the problem with that, is that he should be the one that's protecting her, and he doesn't, or the fact that she's in the battle, that she's opened up or she's vulnerable to be being killed. So it's kind of like this weird, how can you, the audience can't feel that emotionally for her because she's probably going to die, if that makes sense. It's a weird sort of thing. The stakes sort of weren't really there, if anything, and you kind of...
It was a non-event.
Yes,
and then after the fact, we were told that it was really important.
Yeah, and it kind of, it sounds horrible, but it's kind of like she needed to almost be, and again, I know we're sort of saying you shouldn't copy the movie too much, but she almost needed to be like Maximus's wife at home, waiting for him or something, or he's been away from her. So you've got that emotional, the hook, but we don't, because she's in a battle where...
Or have her in the battle, but have him actually fighting alongside her and have something go wrong where he can't save her, or something that she tries to save him, or give us, I know these are all very, very cliched, very well-worn things in films, but they're also there so that you have a cheat sheet to emotional relevancy. So as an audience, we go, I'm sad that she's dead, she was cool. But you also have to do things like, I know we're doing a lot of comparing in this one, but that's what we're here for. In the first film, we have the little statues of the son and the daughter, and they're the little tchotchkes that are so important, and they come back time and time again, and up to and including the final shot of the film. We are reminded as an audience that Maximus losing his wife and son and then finding a way back to them is his journey. The fact that he manages to topple Caesar on the way and to win the people and to bring some sort of hope to Rome is almost a happy accident for him. He doesn't want to be that guy. He wants to fucking get to his wife and kids, and he knows that means dying, and he doesn't give a shit. He just would like to kill Commodus on the way out. And when he dies, he not only kills Commodus, but he also saves Lucius, and he's happy, job done, off to my wife and kids. That is his journey. In this movie, Lucius, doesn't die, again, spoilers, but he lives. And I get they're not going to copy it exactly, but it also means he doesn't really have a trajectory, to the point where he tells us he doesn't have a trajectory. We're told his thing is rage. That's his character definition. And this brings me back to what I was saying about Paul Mescal not looking like he was having a good time, because he's clearly been given the responsibility as the lead of the film to bear the emotional weight of the film. No one else is doing that heavy lifting. Connie Nielsen does it a little bit, but she's relegated to being quite literally a spectator in a lot of this, where it's like, watch the men fight. You can cry a bit and you can yell a bit, but really Lucius is the one who is charged with giving us this emotional journey, but he doesn't have a place to go with it. No. The script hasn't given him a place to go, and the direction hasn't necessarily given him a place to go. So everyone else around him is fucking playing with monkeys, and Denzel Washington's got 37 rings on each finger that he keeps jangling, and he's laughing and drinking wine, and all the other smaller actors that come in, and the Caesars, and even the friends of the gladiators that are his mates, and the doctor. Everyone else is getting to really relish the opportunity to be in this grand sword and sandals film and to play with this huge toy set they've been given, except for Paul Mescal. And it wears on, and you can see in his face, he's like, I'm sad and I'm angry and I'm rage, and that's what I'm going to do in this movie. And then he just scowls for like 80% of the movie. And it's not until the end he kind of manages to go, right. And then he tells us at the end, you're all looking to me to speak, and I'm not a soldier. But, and then he does like a 5-minute monologue, which I thought was hilarious. But he's kind of, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but I just want to put a pin in the fact, the ending of this film, no bueno at all. It really just falls flat on its ass for a number of reasons. But Paul Mescal, again, is given the responsibility, like, now tie it all together with a speech, champ. And then that's the end of our movie. And it doesn't give him much to play with. I think he's great. I think he's a great actor. I think he's doing an incredible job with what he's been given in this movie. I think he must have watched it for the first time and be like, I wish I was playing Denzel Washington's part, or I was playing Joseph Quinn's part, or I was playing even Pedro fucking Pascal's part. Just, I wish I had fun in this movie, because it looked like it was not... I'm sure he had fun making it, but he didn't get to play in the way the others did. And his character seems... I guess maybe deliberately seems out of step with the world because of it, but also he doesn't get to shine in the way that anyone else does in this movie.
Yeah. It's well, speaking of other characters, I mean, Denzel. What do you think of Denzel?
I think Denzel Washington showed up in this movie to remind everyone that he's Denzel fucking Washington, and when he's on screen, you like it, because every scene he's in, it's like, oh God, Denzel Washington's so fucking cool. Like, he's having the best time. I talked to someone who's pretty savvy about these things, and he said to me right out of the gate, he's like, Denzel Washington is going for his 3rd Oscar. He's going to be doing the press circuit. He's going to be really gunning for that Best Supporting Actor Oscar. After watching the film, I was like, he's in with a shot. He is bananas in this movie.
I was very pleasantly surprised because, and don't get me wrong, if Denzel, if you hear this, don't come for me, because I'm a massive Denzel fan, but I do feel like, very similar to Liam Neeson, I think in the last few years, they are getting older, they're getting job offers, but they're just playing themselves in the end, or they're playing the same guy in a couple of movies. And you think of like The Equalizer, he's done 3 of those films, a couple other things where I just think it's just Denzel doing Denzel. So I was kind of going into this going, we're just going to get that again, and I was just so relieved that Denzel just did something different. You're like, we know it's Denzel Washington. It's Denzel fucking Washington. Like, there's some character, like some actors you just see and you can't really see them as another character. But at least I didn't feel like I was watching Denzel Washington. It felt like it was Denzel Washington doing a character. And it was like, I liked it. It was like, it was not doing the usual Denzel thing I'd seen in the last probably 5 or 6 movies. It was like, I'm doing this character. And yeah, I don't know if that's Oscar worthy or not, but he was fun, and I liked that he had that jovial thing about him. But at the end of the day, he's a cunning, sinister kind of guy. Like, he wants his money, he wants his power, and he knows how to charm his way up the ladder.
And I think his character, in terms of connecting to the original, is probably the most interesting and best version of what they did in terms of introducing a new character and connecting it to the original. Again, spoilers, but the I don't know, I guess we call it a revelation that he started out as one of Marcus Aurelius's slaves. And now he's worked his way up to the point where he, for a very brief but important period of time, controls Rome. That's a nice little reminder that, even if Marcus Aurelius is meant to be this great guy, he's only a great guy if you're kind of in his crew. Like, to every nation he conquered, to every slave that he owns, he's a piece of shit. And I thought that was the most interesting idea in this movie, and probably the one thing that elevated it beyond fight scene. And I think Denzel Washington, either through direction or through him being an incredible actor, decided, I'm not going to play this as your regular, like, Game of Thrones style, Littlefinger, cunning, sniveling little guy in the corner. I'm going to be the life of the fucking party. I'm going to be the big, bombastic, but over the top guy who, no, I don't look like everyone else here, and I don't act like everyone else here, and I don't look like I'm from here, and you're still going to love me. And at the end of this, I'm still going to be the leader of this. That scene where he walks in with the head of Joseph Quinn and sits it on the podium and is talking as he turns it around is phenomenal. It's an incredible scene, and I could rewatch that 15 times in a row and not get bored, because he is having the fucking time of his life as an actor, but also he is completely justifying 90% of this movie existing at all by the fact that he's like, I've been here all along. You just didn't see me.
Yeah.
I was here in the first movie. I've been here in between, over the 24 years between movies. I've been here. You just didn't see me because I didn't want you to. And it's almost like a magic trick where you go, yeah, he has been around the whole time. Like, I don't know if I missed something. I have no idea how the fuck those two insane brothers are the Caesars in this movie.
Yeah, well, I was gonna ask you that too. So did get some text at the start? Is that right? That kind of sped us up on.
Yeah, I missed that. To be honest, I showed up to the movie about 3 minutes late, and I missed the text at the start.
There was definitely a text,
I don't know,
but even then, I mean, it was a quick, blah blah blah. These are the twins. They're in. I guess they're the Caesars or. Blah blah blah, but it doesn't. I still was like, I don't get the hierarchy necessarily. I don't get how that all works. But I'm like, but how are they in? Like, I was sort of like, how did that all work? How did they got put in that place?
And Connie Nielsen is still Queen of Rome, apparently.
Yeah,
at least that's what they call her.
Yeah, yeah, because I guess she's the next.
But she sent Lucius away because people would try to kill. Well, Lucius is the next in line because women can't rule.
Yes, exactly.
So Lucius should be, like he says, I'm the Prince of Rome. So he should have been the leader, but she sent him away because people, quote unquote, people might try to kill him. And then,
which is a massive.
Yeah, it also undoes everything that the first film does as well. Like Maximus kills Commodus and dies to bring the Republic back to Rome, to get rid of these Caesars and to give it back to the people, and the Senate will rule, for the people. And in this one, it's like, no, we just didn't do that. Don't worry about it. Yeah. I was like, okay, why? Like, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. Also, and look, I know 24 years have passed, but the first Gladiator begins with Maximus conquering the last people who oppose Rome. Once that battle at the start is finished, there is no one else. The Germanic people are beaten. Rome has conquered all. And then we start the second one, and Rome hasn't conquered all. They're conquering more people, and then there's even more people after that to conquer. So I didn't like where it kind of hacked into the first one a little bit and discredited some of the things of the first one. I'm not a history buff, so I'm sure that there's a very good reason for that. But in terms of pure cinema, it derailed something.
I didn't really think about that too much in regards to the first, but I would imagine that it just shows that these twins are very driven by power, that they want. Like, I think we get that in Pedro Pascal's character. Like, he's like, they keep sending him to battles. He's kind of like, I don't want to really do that anymore.
Which is exactly what Maximus was like.
Well, but it was almost like we're done. We've actually conquered as much as we can really conquer. We don't need to keep doing this because we're also losing good men by trying to do that kind of thing. And he's like, and the same thing. You're right. It's very similar to the Maximus character.
All things that Maximus says in the first movie.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I just thought that was to
Maximus wants
highlight
to
that.
stop fighting for the army, go home, and also is rooting Connie Nielsen.
Mhm.
Pedro Pascal's character wants to stop fighting, go home, and is rooting Connie Nielsen's character.
Mhm.
And then kind of the bits that they don't copy paste of Maximus onto to that. He's also a general, just like Maximus. I can't remember his name, but general. Arachius or something, I think it is.
Yeah.
Then the rest of it they give to Lucius. So they really just they really cut pasted him onto it, which again, I'm slipping into that nitpicking. None of this stuff mattered to me as I was watching it. I will say that. There's only one part of the movie that bothered me as I was watching the movie, and that's the ending. The rest of the movie, I didn't care about how these guys became Caesar, how much of a retread is this of the original, how sort of thin the story is in a lot of ways. I honestly didn't care because I was watching this incredible,
Yeah.
I don't know, pantomime play out on this giant screen.
Mm.
The ending, real quickly, what annoyed me about that is there doesn't seem to be one. I don't know how you felt about this, but it's like they have the final fight. He saves his mum. He doesn't kill either of the Caesars. He doesn't kill the general. And again, this is what I mean, where his character has no journey to go on. He never wants to kill the Caesars or conquer Rome. He just wants, well, he wants to kill the whole Roman army, but he'll set it for the general. He has an opportunity to kill the general. He immediately decides not to, and then says, I didn't see the man. He was so good. And then never talks about his wife again, just wants to save his mum, doesn't save his mum, decides, okay, I'm going to turn my attention onto Denzel Washington's character, chases him down. They talk throughout the movie, Cable, about crossing the river and the metaphor of crossing the river and how if you cross the river, he'll be with his wife. He's like, I keep having visions of crossing a river and being with my wife. And the doctor's like, yeah, crossing a river means like hope and renewal. And then they end the movie with a fucking fight in a river, just so we really get the point. And they don't cross it. They're in the middle because we don't know which way he's going to go. And it was pretty, shout out to Denzel Washington for one of the toughest deaths ever. He gets his fucking arm cut off and just kind of goes, and then he gets his guts cut out and he goes, like, he takes it like a champ. He absolutely takes it like a champ when he gets killed.
Yeah.
But then the movie sort of stumbles to its finish. That, as it was happening, I was like, God, there's no climax to this movie. It's just going to stumble to the credits. To the point where if you watch the original, when the movie finishes, beautiful scene where Jimon Hinsu, who should have fucking been in this movie, the mother and son statues in the dirt where Maximus died, camera pans up, boom, big black and red letters, as big as they can be, directed by Ridley Scott. If you watch the end of Gladiator II, the movie kind of stumbles to its ending and then fades to black, and then it goes straight into the roll credits. It doesn't actually do the big, grand, which speaks of a lack of confidence to me from, and who am I to fucking talk shit about the great Ridley Scott, who is one of the all-time greatest directors. But just the ending, nothing about the ending felt climactic, grand, important. It had none of the things that the original had. And then it's just kind of over. Do you feel like this movie wrapped up at all? Am I missing the point? Did you feel like there was something good about how this concluded?
I couldn't say I disagree with you. I did feel like once he took the arm off Denzel and then obviously gutted him and got up, I kind of felt like I knew there was no going to be battle. Like, you kind of know you're getting towards the end of the runtime. You know that you're close to the end. And while the speech was great and hope, and maybe that was, almost... Yeah, it's weird because it's like the Maximus that was what he was hoping for too, and he obviously does his speech and all that. But yeah, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, we'll go cheer for that, and we're all united now. It's like there was no, I couldn't disagree with that. It was a bit of a flat ending, yes.
I love the idea that there's two huge armies either side of the archway to Rome. And he's in the middle and he's talking to them about all his hope and freedom. I love the idea that, like, only the first 4 rows are probably going to hear him, and the guys at the back are like, what the fuck's going on? Are we fighting or not? And then everyone starts cheering, and one guy's like, fuck it, throw the spear. And they just start throwing spears, and immediately after the speech, the guys at the back start launching arrows at each other because, like, I think we're fighting. Because how are they going to hear him? They don't know who he is. They don't know what the fuck he's talking about. The guys who were the general's army have never even seen this guy. They don't know he's the gladiator everyone likes. He's just some fucking chophead who just killed one of the top guys from Rome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's like, where's this guy from? He's like, he's one of the barbarians we conquered. We didn't kill him. They're like, oh, so the enemy that we just defeated is now trying to tell us what to do. Kill that guy. Like, it's so funny the way that all played out. Jaimon Hinsu, tell me what you think about this. He should have been the doctor.
Well, yeah, that too. Yes,
I get you can't fit his character necessarily in a lot of places in this movie.
But he would have fit there.
But he would have fit there, wouldn't he? Wouldn't that be the perfect spot? You would have to change nothing of the movie, but you could have had him back in this movie. It's an insult that he's not this movie. It's a crime.
They made some interesting choices that, if he was available, I think would have made more sense.
I'm sure he would have said yes.
Well, but like you said, like, it would have made more sense. He's a gladiator that was retired. He becomes a doctor. But all that stuff that he talked about Maximus to Lucius, but he was like, oh, I wasn't here when he was here, kind of thing. And he goes, oh, but hang on, I'll take you down to this cavern and there's this stuff on the wall. Like, that could have always been condensed if that was... So if Juba was playing that role as the doctor, that's a nice continuation and not a forced continuation of the first film. And then they don't even have to have a set where he goes down to a vault where there's Maximus's stuff. Like, I mean, you could have that possibly, but you could just have him, from an exposition point of view, you just give that information to Lucius and saying, oh, I know who you are, or whatever. Even have that as a connection. That may have worked a little bit better, and then he's like, oh, look, I've got something you might want to have, and it's like his stuff. Because he probably would have it. Like, I don't know, And
it would make more sense for those two to trust each other so implicitly, because Juba would probably remember the little kid Lucius and be like, you're a good little dude, I'm glad you're alive. And he'd be like, I remember you fighting alongside Maximus. And he was like, yeah, we were mates. He's like, oh my God. Yeah, it's such an easy thing that they didn't do, and it baffles me. Like, Connie Nielsen is great, but she wasn't given much to do in the sequel other than just be Lucius's mum and the general's wife. Poor fucking Derek Jacobi, who, from what I can tell, is the only other returning cast member, apart from Connie Nielsen, who does come back for the sequel, who is given sweet fuck all to do in this entire movie, and then just gets killed, but in such a blasé way, you don't even realize, unless you're looking closely, that it's his character getting killed.
Yeah.
Like, missed opportunity.
Yeah. What do you think? Sorry, continue.
I was just saying, I don't know for what. I don't know for what reason you would not take advantage of these opportunities.
Look, sometimes, again, we're not there. We don't make those decisions. I'm privy to the decision making, and maybe certain people wanted more money. Who knows? But I feel like, there's a lot of, like, getting Denzel to be in this movie. Obviously, Pedro Pascal, whose star has been on the rise the last few years. Like, it's not like you're getting B-grade actors to be in this sequel. Like, you're getting quality talent in the door. So
no, this is top tier, and it's incredibly well cast.
And yeah, I do wonder. I do wonder if they could have squeeze him in there somewhere and whatever. Like, I mean, they're ticking the diversity box that they have to do in Hollywood these days as well. So it's like, it's not like it's another white guy. Like, you're bringing back a character, but you also sort of, technically, you're ticking off those things that you have to do these days. So don't know why he wouldn't have come back. I think it would have been a better link to Lucius, and maybe a better smoothing out, because I thought the Lucius and Connie Nielsen stuff was very disjointed. Like, he was very angry with her. He couldn't, but then very quickly I felt like he turned, and it's like, well, like, he just seemed a bit like Anakin Skywalker in Attack of the Clones. Like, it's like, well, why are you a petulant child for? Like, it's like, could you not see the bigger picture? You weren't
I hate sand.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought some of that was a little bit, like, again, they were big emotional scenes, but I'm like, it didn't feel consistent across the movie, or just very quickly was forgotten and move on to the next thing.
Because again, like, there isn't a through line for him. There's no beginning, middle, end for his as a character on a journey that has sort of a goal. His goal changes multiple times and then is altogether discarded in this film.
Yeah,
he hates his mother and he hates Rome. I genuinely don't know when he talks about, I don't know my mother and I don't know I don't know who she is. I don't know if we're supposed to think he actually doesn't recognize her or he is just angry at her and telling her, I don't recognize you. Because the way it's played, it could be either. But yeah, his Lucius's journey is, I love living with the people I live with and I love my wife and I have no interest about being Roman or ever going back to Rome in my entire life. I don't even remember what that life was. Wife dies, gets captured, doesn't care or appear to care at all that he's captured at any point. He's kind of happy about it for the most part, and then decides, all right, I'm going to kill the general who ordered the archers to kill my wife. So I hate my mum. Also, I remember my mum, and I also secretly have remembered all along that I'm the rightful heir to the whatever that is, the leadership of Rome. So I know that Maximus is my dad or was my dad. Actually, I'm not that sad about my wife dying. I'm really sad that my mum's in danger, though. My mum's dead. I'm not really worried about that. That's right. The guy who put me in the gladiator fights, who was helping me the whole movie to get the guy who literally said, if you fight for me, I will give you the head of the general. And what does he do? He puts him in the fucking arena with the general as promised. He lives up to his word. He does a great job. He decides not to kill him, and then he decides he doesn't like that guy. And that's kind of it. It is, every part of Lucius's story is very disjointed and confused and seems to have to bend to the mercy of what looked cool on screen as opposed to everything on screen. Every fight in the original Gladiator is not only freaking awesome, but serves to progress the story and elevate Maximus in the eyes of the people of Rome and make him more of a problem for Commodus. To the point where Commodus comes down and greets him and finds out, shit, it's Maximus and he's not dead, and realizes I have a problem. Each fight, in addition to looking so goddamn cool, pushes the story further, does something for the main characters in the movie, does something for us as an audience. This does none of that. The fight scenes are arguably better at times, but do nothing for story at all. And as I said before, as I was watching it, I did not care. After the fact, though, like I said, I watched the original Gladiator, I don't know how many times when it came out. And even though it's been a break, I watched it again this week and went, oh my God, cannot believe it's been this long. Probably in my top 20 films of all time, definitely one of the 100 greatest films of the last 100 years. Would happily watch it multiple times a year for the rest of my life. I don't think I will ever seek out watching Gladiator 2 again.
No.
It was really fun. I had a great time. If they put it back on at IMAX again in 10 years and do as a double bill, you know what? I want to see that baboon fight on IMAX again. I want to see that fucking shark fight. I want to see some of those cool. I want to see a giant sword fight on screen, which we don't get anymore. And we certainly don't get it at the hands of someone as incredibly talented as Ridley Scott. He directed the shit out of this movie. It is such a well-made movie. I can see how they wouldn't really worry too much about the script as they were putting it together. And I know that was the case with parts of it in Gladiator. Some of the most famous lines, like strength and honor, came from there being something in the script that was like Maximus greets his troops, hypes them up, and then they go. And they were talking about what could be the thing he says. And then Russell Crowe looked up all these different things and came with this Latin expression. I can't remember what it is, but he said the Latin expression, and Ridley Scott said, what the fuck does that mean? And he said, oh, it roughly translates to strength and honor. And Ridley Scott said, just fucking say that then. And that's why he says strength and honor in the movie. There's a lot of stuff that happened on the fly in the original Gladiator. So I get that when they were putting this one together, when you have Ridley fucking Scott, the script really is not that important, which sounds terrible, but it's just not. He's so good at making movies. He really doesn't need a fantastic script to make a fantastic movie. I think the problem with this movie is the fantastic elements are so fantastic, but it is a series of scenes as opposed to one big movie. Yeah. And the Denzel scenes are fucking radical, and the fight scenes are fucking radical. And even the general, his scenes with Connie Nielsen, Pedro Pascal and Connie Nielsen, their little moments together, are nice, quiet little moments that I'm like, oh, that's good. There's a bit of heart in this movie after all. But put them all together into 2-something hours of film, and it is more. It's more like a roller coaster ride.
Mm.
It was so fun, but I don't want to ride a roller coaster at home. I don't want to do VR roller coasters on my couch.
Mm.
If I want a roller coaster, I want it. If I want to watch Gladiator 2, it needs to be on IMAX or a giant screen with a bunch of friends and a beer and some popcorn. And because of that, I'm not going to be rushing to watch this movie ever again, despite the fact that I really enjoyed it. Despite the fact that I walked away going, that was fun. I had so much fun. But it was a really strange sensation to walk out of a movie with a group of friends and we'll be like, that was so fun. Wasn't that crazy? Oh my God, man, the baboons, that was so fun. Oh yeah, like that Caesar guy, the little one. What's he from? He was so good. I love that. All of it. And then go, are we ever going to watch this movie again? And everyone go, I don't think so. Like, I can't think of another movie that's happened.
I think you've summed it up pretty well. I definitely had fun watching it. I have to agree. It's a terrible thing to say, and it is a weird thing to say. Like you said, I think I had fun. I was riveted for 2.5 hours, whatever it was. There was some cool stuff in there. I was probably maybe thinking a little bit about the story and how it all marries up with the first. Similar to you, I decided I'd watch Gladiator for the first time in a little while the night before, or a couple of nights before, and loved it again. So I was like, geez, I'm going into this film and don't get your hopes up, all that sort of stuff. So maybe that, like I said, it's kind of maybe elevated, but I had fun. But like you, it's like I have no desire to rush out and see that film ever again. Like, it's terrible because that's not... Films are there to entertain you, but at its very core, it's people want them to be, the rewatchability to be there for you to buy the 4K release or the special edition or whatever it is and watch it again and then stream it or buy it on digital. Like, I just don't see any of that happening with this film for me, and by the sounds of it, you and your friends. So I do wonder where it's going to sit, because I think it's definitely made some money in this first week worldwide. But again, where that goes after, and I got a feeling, I haven't looked it up, but I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have cost them. It would have cost them a pretty penny for sure. So
it was a very big expensive thing. It didn't do the thing that, you know, the studio was really hoping was. They wanted Wicked and Gladiator be the Barbenheimer of this year. They even started trying to push the hashtag Glicked, or you would go watch, or Glicked, you would go watch Gladiator II and Wicked, and really, you know, the hype train would come. And it hasn't happened.
I don't think
for a couple of reasons. I think, first of all, this isn't as good, and I don't think you can get over that. What makes Gladiator 2, I guess, interesting in a grand scheme of things, is what it does better than anything as a movie is it reminds us and shows us just how good the first one is. And it doesn't just kind of, and that's not because it's like, oh, it wasn't as good as the original. It's because it literally does most of what the original does, but not as well, because it's not trying to do it as well. And so as an audience, you can go apples to apples comparison and look at Gladiator 1 and look at Gladiator 2 and go, okay, we have this story. Here's what happens when everyone has really thought through the minutiae of everything. And here's what happens when some people just were like, it'll be fine, don't worry about it. And it's more spectacle than substance. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the point of Gladiator 2 is like, we made Gladiator. That was the one that was really deep and brooding. Now we're going to make Gladiator 2. And this is the crazy party version. This is the one where we're cutting off heads, where Denzel Washington is saying lines like, if the people rise up against them, I'll deliver them his head. And that's politics. Which is one of the best line reads in modern cinema history. It's so fucking good when he does that. But it is the wild, over the top, quite thought through. It's the party version of Gladiator. They didn't really think it all through. They're like, let's just do it and have a good time. And in the morning they woke up and like, was that a bit of a mess?
Yeah, well, I'm going to mention a movie that we haven't talked about yet, but is definitely something I want to in the near future. But it's very funny because it's also Ridley Scott, and it does feel like, you know, very similar to Alien, which I think is a pretty perfect film for Ridley Scott, just like Gladiator. And then he's come back and done a sequel, and he did Prometheus, which I still enjoy. I get a lot of fun out of that movie. I've watched it quite a few times. Saw it at the cinemas a couple of times. But if you peel back the layers of the onion, it has a lot of problems because it does not always necessarily sync up nicely with the original. There's a couple of things that don't really make a lot of sense. But I always had a lot of fun with Prometheus, and I think this is similar to it. Like, it's an enjoyable ride, but does it really stack up to the original, and does it, do it justice? Probably not.
The budget for Gladiator 2 is estimated to be around $310 million. So this movie needs to make back, and it's on its way. I think it had like an $80 million opening weekend and is tracking pretty well to have a pretty good second weekend. And look, despite us being like, you've got to see it on the big screen, a lot of people are still going to watch this at home. A lot of people are going to stream it, VOD it, all those kind of things. So it's going to make its money eventually. I don't know if the drop off is going to happen faster than they're predicting, because it is not a sensation yet. Maybe that'll come, but it hasn't had the hype beforehand. It hasn't had the build that, they said they wanted to do it like a Barbenheimer, so it hasn't had the build that Oppenheimer and Barbie had. It is also coming at a very different time in cinema history. There's a lot of things working against it in that regard, and there are also a lot of other big films coming out, which I think have the opposite effect of like a Barbenheimer.
Yeah, well, the funny thing about Barbenheimer as well, like, I just can't believe that was a thing, but I do feel like that was just like this weirdly organic thing that happened and then just got traction.
It came from people. It didn't come from studios.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Studios, people don't want to hear what studios like. Don't tell us what to do. Like, and so I think you can't really manufacture that unless it's your same studio where you have these sort of almost competing movies, but which is not, they normally wouldn't do that anyway. But they're still very different films. Like, I know you could say, well, Wicked's the Barbie to Gladiator 2's Oppenheimer, but even then, Gladiator is a sequel. Gladiator 2 is a sequel. So at least with Oppenheimer,
Gladiator 2 is a sequel, and Wicked is a part one.
Yeah.
So Gladiator 2 is the sequel to Gladiator, and Wicked is only the first half of the movie. So we've got a lot of factors working against it there in terms of
and
having
it's not
the same sort of sensation.
I would say Barbie was this out of the blue kind of Mattel property has a long history. Everyone on the planet, a bit like Coca-Cola, you know what Barbie is. You may not have had a Barbie, but everyone knows what it is. So it had this inbuilt thing, or curiosity at least. Like, I went and saw it. Like, and Oppenheimer is historically, a biopic. And so then you go, well, Gladiator 2 is, uses some sort of historical elements, but is a work of fiction. And then you've got Wicked, which is, like you said, it's sort of like almost a sequel or prequel to the original Wizard of Oz.
It's a two-parter. It's the first half of a two-parter.
It is going to be a two-part. Yeah. Okay. But then that's the thing too. It's still, but it's still, in essence, it's still got, historically, it's attached closely to the original 1939 Wizard of Oz film, but then it's also was theatrical, musical stage extravaganza that's now been made into a movie. So I was like, I don't know if you can manufacture those two things together to get a Barbenheimer. It just does. To me, it's just.
And also, you're forgetting something. You're forgetting something else that's really important, is that Greta Gerwig and Christopher Nolan are much bigger names as directors than Ridley Scott and John. I'm going to get his name wrong. John M. Chu. It is John M. Chu. I got it right. God damn it. So we're forgetting something, which is that Greta Gerwig and Christopher Nolan are much bigger names in cinema these days than Ridley Scott and John M. Chu, who's directing Wicked. And I'm not saying Ridley Scott is a slouch, but to current cinema people, mainstream movie-going audience, if someone goes Ridley Scott, people are like, who's that? What did he direct? Is he the Top Gun guy? And they go, no, that's his brother Tony Scott. And he doing he did the last one. Did I say last? I don't know if I saw Last Duel. He did the original Gladiators, like from the year 2000. He did Alien. Like the Avatar guy. No, that was like I could see people being like, I'm not sure who Ridley Scott is. But you say Christopher Nolan, people go, who's he? He did Interstellar. You go, yeah, with Matthew McConaughey. You go, yeah, he did the Batman trilogy, the one before Robert Pattinson. Yep. Fuck yeah. Like,
The Prestige, that's one of my favorite films.
Is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Following, the guy directed Following. I know who you're talking about. So I think Gladiator 2 has in terms of a box office side of things, it has its work cut out for it. It is going to make its money. I think there's no doubt about that. It's too big to fail, honestly. And if it's 80 million into the game in the first weekend, it's got nothing to worry about. Because it is like an apples to apples comparison, I am curious because we are entering that most wonderful time of the year where we're starting to be forced as film lovers to think about the Academy Awards and what's gonna win, what's gonna happen, what's gonna be nominated, what's going on. I'll read you the wins, just the wins, not the nominations for the original Gladiator. In 2001 at the Academy Awards, Gladiator won Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Visual Effects, Best Costume Design, Best Sound Mixing, and then every other big category is nominated. Supporting Actor, Director, Cinematography, Score, all of the big ones were nominated.
How did it not get Score? Anyway, that's another. Yeah. Anyway,
it's crime. Do we think any of those categories are going to be represented in Gladiator 2? I don't see it getting nominated for Best Picture. I don't think it's going to have momentum. I can see a world where Ridley Scott gets nominated for Best Director, because like I said, he directed the shit out of this movie. When you think about what it would take to put that movie on screen, like none of that exists. We're so spoiled as film lovers, and I know I've said this on the podcast before, but we forget none of that exists. None of it is real. They had to build a replica of the Coliseum in Malta. They had to make swords that look like Roman swords. They had to make the armor. They had to train or CG the animals for nothing we watch in that movie exists unless Ridley Scott says point the camera there and put that in front of it. So for that reason, and because he's Ridley Scott, he could be there. I think we are definitely going to see Denzel Washington in the Best Supporting Actor race. Look, some of the below the line stuff, costume, makeup, sound mixing, score was good. I think we could see those things. I don't think this is going to be the phenomenon in any way the original was. And normally I wouldn't give it a thought to that because, it's not what it's about. However, the reason I'd bring it up this time is because this movie really seems to be trying hard to be the first Gladiator. It wants to replicate what the first Gladiator was. It wants success. It wants the accolades. It wants the respect. It wants the lore that is built around it. And I don't see how it's going to happen. I don't see where it's going to come from this time, which is really sad because it should be something you can just go enjoy and not have to worry about. But it doesn't want to be that. And I don't know what the legacy of this movie is going to be. Ridley Scott is in this really interesting part of his career where he really doesn't seem to give a shit what anyone says, which is amazing. But it also means that if you're making movies like this, where you're like, give me all the accolades and people don't, it could have a negative effect. I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking about my ass. The last time we saw Ridley Scott really represented at an awards season, from what I can remember, is The Martian, where the movie famously got nominated in the Golden Globes for Best Comedy, which confused everyone because Best Comedy or Musical is the category, actually. And it is neither of those things, despite being very funny and occasionally Matt Damon singing songs. But post that, he's kind of been in this weird spot where he made a bunch of movies that people didn't really, post The Martian. He made Alien Covenant. He made All the Money in the World, which is the movie that Kevin Spacey had to be edited out of, and then they refilmed because it happened. It was just about to be released right when all the Kevin Spacey shit went down. He directed The Last Duel, which apparently is very good, but no one has seen. He directed House of Gucci, which is insane, and I love it, but not for the reasons that I should. And he directed Napoleon for Apple, which came and went with barely a whisper, despite the fact it was hailed as being one of the great epics to come out ever, and then it just sort of wasn't. So I don't know what's going to happen with Gladiator 2. I hope Ridley Scott continues to make these fuck you, I don't care movies, because no one else is doing it quite like him at the moment. No one else can get the budget, and no one else can pull it off either, really. But
this is an interesting little trivia note that I was reading up on, and I did know. It's weird. I kind of did notice it. Like, when there's movies you've watched so many times, you even know the credits, the studio that's bringing it out because you see all that stuff. The one thing I sat down to watch the film, that surprised me. I'm like, where's the Universal logo? And yeah, it was just, Universal was missing because they decided, no, we're not putting money into this film. I know a lot of some back
Which is very
catalogue-
odd.
Again, I think IMDb or wherever I read said some of the back catalogue of some of those Universal films is now owned maybe by Paramount or whatever. So Universal, like, we're not going to tip in, which is fair enough. That's their prerogative too. They might have thought they're probably like me. Why do we need a sequel to Gladiator? But like you said, an almost already perfect film. Why? Sometimes I think it's sad when there's a sequel when you don't have the same intros that you're so used to. It's a bit like when we got away and we started having Disney Star Wars films and we lose the 20th Century Fox.
Or the Dimension logo on the screen.
Wow, yes, that too.
Yeah, there is a I don't know, a comfort that comes with it.
Yes, 100%.
There's rumors already, and I don't put much stock in them, but it's fun to talk about these things. There's rumors already that we're getting a Gladiator 3 because this has been such a big, sweeping, grand scale epic. And
But could they
demand it, despite it's only been
do a sequel? Like you said, I know that there's a lot of cost involved with a lot of the pre-production side of stuff and the visuals and, recreating Rome and the Coliseum and stuff. But is there a way they can somehow find a way to make a really great story that's compelling and exciting enough and scale back that budget? Because I kind of feel like they would have to somehow cut some corners and go, maybe we don't need CGI water and ships and sharks in the Coliseum, and maybe we can save. I don't know. I look, now that they've got a continuation, they've got a character that's alive. Maybe there is some juice they can squeeze now that they've gone down this path. So I can kind of see they could do a sequel. I just wonder whether they can do something where that's interesting enough.
I mean, Ridley Scott is the one who is sowing the seeds of this, by the way.
Oh, okay, of course.
When asked about Gladiator 3, Ridley Scott said there will certainly, these are his words, there will certainly be a Gladiator 3. He's already hard at work on the third installment, according to Sir Ridley Scott. And I, for one, am all for it, despite my probably mixed messaging throughout this episode about this movie. Yeah. I hope he makes a Gladiator 3, and if I watch Gladiator 3 only once and enjoy it and never watch that again too, I'll be perfectly happy, because Gladiator 2 was a wild ride. I don't see Sir Ridley Scott is quite advanced in years. I don't see any other directors on the current horizon who are going to put the effort into a movie like this or be the skill that we have in the current crop. It's going to be, there might be directors out there who could do it, but they're not famous enough to get the budget yet. So we're quite a ways away from the next crop of directors who will be given the absolute free reign as well as the budget. Like Ridley Scott was just given the money and they said, go make Gladiator 2. I think the only real restriction he had was, this is unverified, but I'm inclined to believe it, is he had to cast kind of a young hot star, which is how we get Paul Mescal in there. And then once Paul Mescal signed on, they're like, we need one more super famous person, which is why Denzel Washington is in there. I believe that is a perfectly logical, reasonable thing that a studio would ask for when giving you $310 million. Put a face on the fucking poster that people know. But he was just given the money and they said, have fun, man. Give us a movie. And he sure as hell gave us a movie. So yeah, make 3. Make 3, make 4, make 5. If Ridley Scott spends the last years of his life making Gladiator movies.
Again, without knowing the timeline,
fucking great.
Without knowing the timeline of the fall of the Roman Empire, I kind of feel like that's probably where that's heading anyway. Like that's the possible.
That would be a cool movie.
I think the fall of the empire, to show that it never got over Commodus and other stuff happening, that it was like it just fell away. It became greed, power, and just decadent. Deplorable place to be, or not a deplorable place to be, just a deplorable state. That we see the fall of the Roman Empire. That'd be interesting. See, I think there's a movie there. Yeah,
and I think I'll watch it at IMAX on opening weekend, and I'll have a great time with that too. God, I feel conflicted about how I've spoken about this movie.
It is weird because, like I said, It's one of those films, again, I enjoyed every minute of it. I probably raised the eyebrow a couple of times and sort of thought about it, but I mean, again, it's a very interesting film, especially because the original had the tagline, "Are you not entertained?" Well, I was entertained. It's just unfortunate. I do feel like when you thinking about sequels and if they're trying to, platform the next one or at least be on the par of the first one and have it again have that emotional attachment to the characters and be moved. I just don't know if there was that. We didn't get that like we did in the first film. So, and like you said, I think Paul Mescal was amazing in it. I just think, unfortunately, the character was disjointed. Again, I don't know whether he was given different scripts or they were writing stuff a little bit on the fly or like, oh, give us you angry and rageful in this scene, but what he showed him. Like, I feel like it was almost like he was getting mixed messages and a lot of what was happening didn't really track. It wasn't necessarily his performance. It's just maybe, like you said, the through line was a little bit not straight enough. I don't know.
I wish he had been allowed to just use his Irish accent in the way that Rusty was allowed to just use his Aussie accent.
Well, it's funny.
That'd be great.
Well, it's funny you say that because apparently Denzel's copped heat for using his normal accent. Well, why has he got a New York?
Feels like everyone in this movie was allowed to use their normal accent, except Paul Mescal.
Yeah,
like literally every other actor is either British or American or Indian or whatever their native language is.
But do you think his Irish is maybe too thick Irish that they like? We kind of need to get a little bit more English, if that makes sense. We don't know what.
I think Irish is just too. Irish is such a musical accent. I think it stands out too much. I think you can have a group of people in ancient Rome, and some of them are Australian, and some are English, and some are American, and some are unknown. And the accents all kind of blend in. You're like, oh, yeah, whatever, they're just talking. And if in the midst of all that, a guy comes in and goes, "No soldier, but I believe in Rome." The fucking guy's Irish.
Well, it
like
sounds
in
horrible.
a way that you just don't with other accents.
It probably sounds horrible, but it probably doesn't sound the most masculine sort of accents at times. Like you said, like how do you take that?
I reckon
I think does it really matter? Like I know movies back in the day. You look at some of those older Hollywood films that are those. Roman type empire like Ben-Hur and all these, Cleopatra and all that. I can imagine them trying to do the accents and at least have everyone be on the similar plane. But it's like, it gets to a point. It's like, I don't care about the accent as long as I understand what they're saying and they act the hell out of it. If it means they just have to stay in their native tongue, who gives a shit? And the same with Denzel. Like, apparently he copped grief. Apparently a few people have critiqued that why is he not doing the accent? And it's kind of like, it's like, well, does it really matter? And then someone did point out, I don't know.
Yeah, how dare anyone criticize Denzel in this movie?
Well, that's what I agree. That's the way I look at it. It's like, who cares about the accent? If he's acting the hell out of it and he's charming and he's playing his character well and we understand what the motives are and how he's manipulating the other people around him, like, who cares about the accent? Like, it would be just offensive if he did a completely different accent and he was putting on a stupid accent. Like, it's not even whatever, but I think he's even come out like, it's like, well, what's an African accent back then and all that sort of stuff. And I kind of agree with him. It's like,
well, I remember vividly when they were interviewing Russell Crowe for number one, and they're like, "Oh, Russell, you're not putting on an accent on this one. You're just using your Australian accent." And Russell's response was, "Well, no one really knows what people, the Spaniards living in Rome sounded like back then. So, maybe they sounded like this. You don't know. Yeah." And then he just walked off. And that was his explanation for the accent. And I was like, fucking rock on, Russell Crowe. That's a great response.
And I think
we don't. We don't have any recordings of the Spaniards living in ancient Rome.
And I think, so obviously Denzel's sort of taken a bit of heat and then has obviously had to go back sort of saying, like, who cares? Like, enjoy the performance kind of thing. And then, I don't know, again, I've lost track of where I've read it, whether it was on IMDb. So Denzel's copped a little bit of heat for that. And look, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter as long as his performance can fade to the audience, and we get it, and it's a great performance. Like, I really don't care about the accent, though. I believe, did he cop heat for trying to do an accent many years ago in a film I read on IMDb, maybe in the 80s, early 90s. He tried to do the English accent.
Or
It was,
maybe Much Ado About Nothing. I think he
yeah, so
tried to do an accent.
he was
Him and
keen for an
Keanu played
accent back
brothers.
then. I think he was keen for an accent back then, and it wasn't. And so you sort of get to a point, you go, you know what? Like, I'd rather him not do an accent that sounded terrible, and just feel like you're watching a movie. I'm just glad he wasn't Denzel being Denzel in this movie. So that's what I take away.
Also, Denzel Washington has one of the most delicious speaking voices in cinema, and it is a fucking joy to hear him in a movie. You leave him alone, internet.
Yeah.
Be happy you get to hear him talk on camera at all. He's fucking great. He did do a British. I remember years and years and years and years. One of his first films, he did a British accent in a movie called For Queen and Country, where he's like almost a Cockney. That is a little bit funny because even through the Cockney, he's still got like that. I don't know, that flinty, raspy kind of thing to his voice that he can't cover. But yeah, let him cook, man. He's giving you everything you could ask for in this movie. How dare you be like, why aren't you? I mean, and what do they want him to be? British? Like, he's not going to be Italian. He's not going to be African. No one else in the movie is Italian. He's, instead of talking like Denzel, he's going to be talking like this, huh? Is that what do you want, you haters? Leave him alone, man.
I think the last
I'm
thing
more
I just
confused now
want,
than I was when I started this.
well, the last thing I guess I want to talk about, and I guess as we wind this podcast up, is the whole revelation that Lucius is the son of Maximus. You haven't really gone back to it. We had to answer, and I'd like to hear your opinion on it because I feel like we might be on a different wavelength on this.
Okay, look. So when you rewatch Gladiator, and when I rewatched it this time, I knew that I was about to watch the sequel where it was Maximus's son with Connie Nielsen's character. Who I haven't
Can I just stop you there for a second though? At what point? Why did they decide to tell us that leading into this film? Because I feel like that wasn't told to us, and I think they were trying to hide that from us, and that was going to be a really cool revelation at some point.
Because like most,
and then they just like, we're just going to put it out.
I think most people when they're thinking about whether or not they're going to see Gladiator 2 are like, wait, so Russell Crowe's dead. He's not in this one. So has this got nothing to do with the first one? Or who is this guy? Is he? Oh, so Paul Mescal is playing Maximus? Is that what's happening? What's happened? I'm confused. And I think studios are always treating audiences like they're dumb and looking for ways to remove any confusion. But I think if you purely like, if you're on the internet and you look up Gladiator 2, one of the top 5 things you're going to see is a poster for Gladiator 1. And the poster for Gladiator 1 is just Russell Crowe in his armor holding a sword in front of the Coliseum. And the poster for Gladiator 2 is just Paul Mescal holding a sword in his armor in front of the Coliseum. And you're going to go, how the fuck are these two things connected? And if you read about Lucius, is a soldier who's captured and forced to fight in the Coliseum, you go, is this just fucking Gladiator 1 again? Which, yes. But if you go, Lucius, son of Maximus from Gladiator, embarks on the stream like, oh, it's an A, son is copping it. All right. So Lucius being Maximus' son. So if you watch the original very closely, as I did, or if you find yourself about to watch Gladiator 2 and didn't rewatch the first one, or you did rewatch Gladiator 1, or you've seen Gladiator 2 and you're a bit confused about it all, it is all done with innuendo and suggestion. They talk about how Maximus and Connie Nielsen's character, goddamn, I really should look up her freaking name. Connie Nielsen's character, whose name is Lucilla. Well, they really, all the names are like pretty solid Roman names, so they do blend in a bit. So Lucilla and Maximus, they talk about did have a relationship prior to Maximus marrying this other woman, having this kid, and they talk about, there's a couple of nice lines where they say, oh, he broke your heart. And she goes, no, I broke his, alluding to the fact that she dumped him. And there are nods and winks around the idea that maybe, just maybe, Lucius is actually Maximus' son. And it really only comes in the scene where they're talking about how old their sons are. And she says, oh, Lucius is 8. And he goes, oh, my boy is almost the same age, implying that he could have banged her, knocked her up, broken up, gone to his wife, knocked her up. And, there's like almost a year or a year and a bit between. But, and the way that she kind of looks at him when she's talking about, and the way he looks at her, it's not a long bow to draw where you could be like, she's kind of winking that maybe, but that's it. It is a suggestion, and it's something that if you don't pick up on, you can immediately
Can I-
drive past. They also
Yeah.
say flat out that he's 8 in the first one, and then they tell us flat out in the sequel that he's 12, which you can't do that. You can't tell us flat out. You can't have a mother say, my son is 8, and then the sequel go, he was 12 when she sent him away. Like, no, watch the first one. You've already told us he's 8. You can't fix
Yeah.
that. You have to
Yeah.
adhere to that. That's bullshit talk.
And
But
so-
it's all just, I think, a bit too convenient. It's all a bit of nonsense. They needed a link. So they're like, nah, his son died in the first one. We'll just say the other kid was his son.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Okay.
And I'll go a step further.
Look,
I think
I hear what
it's
you're
entirely unnecessary.
Yeah.
Nothing happens in this movie that makes it important that he's Maximus's son. Doesn't need to happen. Doesn't need to be there. Does nothing for anything. Like he never gets. It doesn't change his mind about anything that he's Maximus's son.
Yeah,
It doesn't alter his trajectory.
Well, it does because he becomes he's now the prince.
But
Now
he was the prince already.
Yeah, I know, but now he's officially
He's the prince because
prince.
of
Yeah,
Connie
he's a-
Nielsen.
He's
No,
fighting,
he's the prince because he's Marcus Aurelius's grandson.
Yeah.
Maximus has nothing to do with him being the prince.
I know, I get that, but just him coming back, almost like harnessing the Maximus power, the bloodline, being the gladiator that his dad was.
Well, it's not even the bloodline. Like he could have harnessed the power just because he remembered watching that guy fight in the Coliseum and he really liked him. And now he's like, oh, now I'm in the same spot. Like you've already got Lucilla. That's the link. You've got his mum is both the character and the actor are alive and in this movie. And there's nothing that changes. If we ever happen to watch this movie again, I'm happy to be proven wrong. But when I was watching, there's nothing that changes when he finds out that he's Maximus's son. It's an irrelevant point.
Yeah, well, it's like the Indiana Jones thing, yeah, right? Indiana Jones in the Raiders of the Lost Ark changes nothing. Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
If Lucius never is told Maximus is his dad, this movie plays out exactly the same.
I don't totally disagree with that, but I kind of feel like, do you reckon he had an inkling already at some point? No? Well, he had to be told.
Well, again, it's very confused the way that they pitch that to us. Like when she tells him, he kind of looks a bit surprised, but also not surprised. Like he's kind of like, no, yeah.
Yeah, it tracks. It tracks.
Which, I mean, I guess his supposed real dad is dead when Gladiator 1 starts, so he doesn't really know him.
Yeah.
And he watched this badass fucking guy called Maximus fight in the Coliseum and fuck up the entire of Rome because he was so cool. Like he probably fantasized that guy was his dad. He's like, God, I wish that guy was my fucking dad. And maybe she's just lying. Maybe she's like, yeah, no, he was heaps your dad. Can you be cooler now? And he's like, fuck yeah, Max is
For
my
me
dad.
personally, I always, every time I watched Gladiator, before this movie was even a twinkle in Ridley Scott's eye, I always took it at there was a good chance that Lucius was his offspring without having any exposition too much about the ex-husband. I just felt like their character moments, even though Maximus had lost his son and there was this whole similar age and that, I don't know why I always thought there was a connection. But like you said, like if they're changing, not even getting the age right compared to what they had in the last movie, that's really sloppy. Similar to an episode we talked about a long, long time ago, The Mummy Returns. If you're going to make a sequel, know your material, especially if you're coming back. Like, know the dates that you set your original movie so things track when you set up the next movie. Like, you can't have things that don't make sense because you said something happened in 1932 and now it's 1934, but your son's 8. They couldn't, it just, like, can someone do a double check and watch the original film first? And go, okay, these are the dates, the kid was this age, right? Like get it right, people. Like, how hard is it? You're spending $310 million. Get your movie right.
There is someone whose whole job is just to read the script and make sure that you're saying the right things and staying on track and not creating any inaccuracies. And I'm sure part of their job is to research anything that references the first film. So it was something that would definitely have come up and been ignored for some reason.
Well, I think we've picked apart a few sequels we've talked about. Even the Scream, we love Scream. And even then, for so-called fans, Radio Silence, while they did some good things, they weren't so good at some other things, like cross-referencing other stuff that already happened and times and dates. Like, how hard is that? But anyway, I digress.
So I think as a story point, I guess you need a link to the original. a better link would have been to make more use of Lucilla's character. She's not in that much. To make more use of Derek Jacobi's character, to have put Juba in there.
Yeah, that
in
would have
some
been good. I
capacity,
think that would have worked.
to have linked us to the existing characters and build. They also the legend of Maximus. They just throw it at us at one point. It's like, oh yeah, this guy was a great gladiator, and like, yeah, I saw him when I was little. And they're like, yeah, but there is no feeling that the legend looms large or anything. It's a real throwaway moment when we're told that Maximus is this great hero and here's his armor, and if you wear his armor, you'll have his strength and things. They really don't do as much with that as I thought they would. I thought the idea of Max, like especially once he starts to think about him and talk about him, I thought that would become a real like thing, and it wasn't.
Yeah, you're right. Like he should have kind of been almost like a legend, like this almost mythical character that they, like you said, they obviously talk positively about, but it's still like not as much knowledge of that. Like I feel like it's a bit like, again, going back to The Force Awakens, a bit like Rey, when she said, oh my god, the Jedi's and this and that, and it was only like 30 years ago, and Han's like, yeah, it's true, all of it. Like, hang on a second, this is not like hundreds of years ago, it's like 30 years ago. Like, no offense, but I'm sure there's some decent documentation people still around that can verify. Like, and the same thing, it's like, you're talking about 2020. Did they go with the same timeline? Because I think
we're talking. No. I think we're talking like 12, 15 years. I think Lucius is meant to be in his 20s. Yeah. And if they tell us he's 12 when he goes away, we're not even talking like 20 years.
Yeah, I feel like, did they say 16 or 20? This is bad. I've just bagged out people for not double checking their movies. I probably should have double checked this, but I think it's either 16 to 20, or that's the timeline that the jump, the skip. But I do feel like that you think there would be more of an aura around talking about Maximus, about how he rose to challenge Commodus, and he helped, inspire us, and he was such a great leader, and all that sort of stuff.
I don't know what was going on in this movie. I also think, I wonder if maybe for all of the quibbles we're having here, maybe none of it matters, because we both agreed we enjoyed the fucking movie. Yeah. So maybe they did it. Maybe they looked at us and went, nah, it doesn't matter. People will still have a good time. We don't give a shit. You're going to have fun at this movie.
Hey, look, at the end of the day, it's, like I said, film is there to entertain us. It's a piece of art. We were entertained, so we can't be too negative, I don't think. And like I said, I think roughly a 7 on IMDb. Last time I checked, I think Rotten Tomatoes is sort of about that 70 mark too. So I mean, it can't be too bad.
Yeah, I just checked 71 on Rotten Tomatoes.
There you go. And I think
for whatever that's worth,
you can't argue with that. I mean, I think what, even the biggest cynic would be pretty happy with 70.
Yeah, it's fine. It's perfectly fine. It's fun. It does everything that it's trying to, I guess. I do wish it had have tried a little harder in points, but that's not the movie's fault. That's what I want, and that's obviously not what Ridley Scott wanted. And he has made more $310 million movies than I have. So, what the fuck do I know? But yeah, I don't think I'm going to see this movie again, which is so strange. I will definitely be looking up YouTube clips of Denzel Washington's performance when that goes online, just so I can watch him go off the wall. And I can't wait to see the supercut at the Academy Awards this year, when he's undoubtedly nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Hopefully slotting into that like RDJ thing from the Oppenheimer win last year, where it's like, you remember this guy is one of our greatest actors, currently living actors. Remember all the fucking incredible shit he did? Yeah, we know he went and made some action movies for a bit. Yeah, we know he's kind of been out in the weeds a little bit. But you put him in a $310 million movie and let him cook, and he will show you what acting is. Give him a goddamn award, and I think he'll probably get it. And I think I'll probably be like, fuck yeah, Denzel, when he does.
Denzel fucking Washington.
MVP of this movie, by far. Absolute MVP of this film.
Well, on that note, not all sequels suck.
That's politics.
And Denzel Washington rules.
Fuck yeah, Denzel.
We good? Yeah?
Yeah, good. Hey, sequel suck fans.
My definition alone, there are fewer films.
I almost sequel 3 times. mate, quick warning.
People suck.
This episode is
People suck.
spoilers because all the
I don't think that's how it would happen.
over. It's go crazy.